We are in the infamous storage facility located on the west side of Manhattan. Here we go. Hope I didn't scare you. So this opens up like that, and it magically opens. Whoa! What do we have sitting here? Now, how did we know that this was going to be here? This is the 2-track master 30 IPS stereo tape. These are the original master tapes that the reissue of Die for the Worms was mastered from, the original tapes. This is the tape right here, and these are the 3 tunes. You can see 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. Hey, how are you? All right. We need some evidence for the lawyer. What? We hope that you enjoy the album, and we hope you enjoy this little tour. And, yeah. Die for the Worms came out 33 1/3 years ago, from right now, from when we're speaking, which is 2017. As far as like musical influences go, I mean, my piano teacher, of course, you know, and I want my mom, you know, she had bought me my piano. I was like 4 years old. I studied at home. I studied with a piano instructor. It was all classical. Believe it or not, I wrote my very first song when I was 8 years old. And I kind of still remember it to this day. Give me a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 8. I'm 8 years old today. Trying to sing like an 8-year-old. I attended Juilliard for about a little while. I think it was about a year and a half. When punk started happening, you know, I'd have like, you know, my music books, you know, and I you know, Sex Pistols, you know, The Clash, Plasmatics. I'm like going to school with this stuff, you know, like, what the hell? You know, but no, you should, you know, have Mozart. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I had this paper route, and I was delivering newspapers. Just, I started like having thoughts of songs, ideas started coming to me when I was about maybe like 14 or so. The band was originally called Jism and the Vitamins. We had like a new wavy type sound. And it was basically a 4-piece with me on Farfisa. That's one of the things that stood out with my band, is that we incorporated the keyboards into hardcore. I eventually started just putting that aside and became sort of the vocalist of the band. We recorded the Attack/Queen Jap 45. After that single, I kind of meandered around a little bit. Eventually, I moved down to Atlanta. What happened was there was a scene that started developing in New York City. I'm at this club called A7, which was an after-hours club. The Bad Brains would play there. The Beastie Boys, which were the young and the useless at the time, they would play there. I think Black Flag played there once or twice. And there was a scene happening in New York City while I was living in Atlanta. Bob, my manager, came up with the idea to put out this compilation called The Big Apple Rotten to the Core. It kind of coincided with the Let Them Eat Jelly Beans compilation from the West Coast, along with This Is Boston, Not LA, from Boston. I recorded 4 tunes for that compilation. John Hinckley Jr., What Has Jodie Done to You, which is, you know.
Yeah. You sent Jodie letters to Adorned, it was fun plus smell. You're not Bob De Niro.
It was around the time that, you know, Hinckley had shot Reagan and so on and so forth. That tune ended up getting played on WLIR, which was a commercial station that played like new wave and punk. I got many phone calls. You getting played on the radio? And I'm down south. I'm like, I need to get my ass up to New York City. I had like my Chevy Malibu, my U-Haul was in the back, you know, and I drove up here straight, man. And I slept in my car that night, man. And I woke up, I turned on my ignition, and I remember hearing the Prince song, When Doves Cry, I think it was. The next song they played was John Hinckley Jr. I was just, whoa. I could not believe that. I mean, I'm literally sleeping in my car and hearing this myself on the radio was like so surreal. I ended up had to get a band together. Us as musicians, as Jism, we were all quadrupolar opposites. Mark came from the heavy metal, and Larry was like the stoner, Steve was like the rocker, and you know the classical. But for some reason, it worked. And we ended up playing at our first gig about a month later, a venue called My Father's Place, which was in Long Island. It was like a Wednesday night. They had like hardcore night. We were getting played on the radio, and the momentum was building.
Hey, let's go down A7!
And then we started playing with Black Flag and TSOL, and we played with the Ramones and played CBGBs. CBGBs were having hardcore matinees. The CBGBs is to punk rock what the Cavern was to the Beatles. We played with the Freeze and Suicidal Tendencies out in City Gardens in New Jersey. We needed to get something out because John Hinckley Jr. was kind of like dwindling on the radio a little bit. So we put out a remake of I Think I Love You by the Partridge Family.
I think I love you!
Which is a great song. I sort of orchestrated that tune to fit the band's approach musically. That was really aggressive. At that time, I started writing songs for the Die for the Worms. I didn't really have a mapped out plan. I just had a bunch of ideas that I just went with the flow, you know, like 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd be sitting there watching TV, and I remember writing the lyrics down and like, you know, getting on the piano the next day and kind of working it out, you know, and bringing those cassettes, and I give them the cassettes, and you know, they learn it off the cassettes, and we change a chord or two, whatever it was, you know, and there's no like overdubs, hardly any on it. Everything was pretty much done straightforward in the studio. I remember like doing the piano, some of the piano lines like 4 o'clock in the morning. I have it here. You put it down for me. The Die for the Worms album, which is very Shakespearean, and one day we will all be a Die for the Worms. It's a very simple concept. And then you turn it over, it's birth and death. And a lot of stores didn't want to carry it because of, you know, the cover.
Still auto theft in New York City.
Auto theft in New York City, bitches think it's pretty funny. Auto theft in New York City.
Auto theft in New York City. Okay, my parents' car got stolen. When we'd finally gotten the car back, we never reported, or never really got reported that the car was retrieved and we had gotten it back. And I drove down to a record store with a bunch of friends of mine, and all of a sudden all these undercover / policemen surround me and my friends. I'm like, no, I have the registration. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Put your hands behind your back.
Thought you were cool with your brand new Zia. Brought it to the pool and then bring it to the beach.
This is the 111th precinct calling about your 74 Chevy that was reported stolen 2.5 years ago. You kindly give us a call at 423-7400. Thank you.
Hey man, this one's called White Castle at 3 a.m.
White Castle, 3 a.m., that's self-explanatory. White Castle, 3 a.m. Who didn't go to White Castle at 3 a.m. after a night out with your friends? It's one of the finest dining establishments, probably, I think, in the world. That was a joke. About White Straight Male just pretty much deals with the curse of being, you know, white, straight, and male.
With your white straight male, the total company collects you. White straight male, police department rejects you. White straight male, the more legal one won't accept you.
Herpes Simplex 2, I think, was the first hardcore song to feature a harpsichord. It was like, you know.
Get away from me. I don't want to catch your herpes.
It dealt with Herpes Simplex 2, which was the pre-AIDS epidemic. Man-Boy Love Sickie deals with NAMBLA, North American Man-Boys Love Association.
Man boy, love sickie, you're sick in the head. You've got no human rights. We have to protect.
John Hinckley Jr., which is another version. This is the revamped version of the original.
John Hinckley Jr., why has Jodie Done to you?
If I Think I Love You, which is the same version of the single. Life Ain't No Bowl of Brady Bunch, which was Bob Solis's idea. That song deals with, you know, you look at TV and that's not what it's all about. You know, you see this, like, you look at the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch, you know, the All-American Family, and really, that's really not what the American family is about. And then, side two, we have Dance Club Meat Market. Back then, that's where people congregated.
Dance Club Meat Market, Dance Club Meat Market.
A vegetarian at a barbecue just deals with being an outsider. That's a metaphor. A shit list.
What's it talk about? Nothing.
Drunk driving, self-explanatory.
Driving around.
Proud to Be Guilty was another tune that was on the Rotten to the Core album. And just from the title alone, you can pretty much infer what you want to from the tune. Moon the Moonies. That song originated from an experience that I had at Queens College. The Moonies were a cult that was started by the Reverend Sung Young Moon. And they tried to persuade students to kind of join their, you know, cult/organization. I started this club called the Queens College New Wave Punk Club. One day in the springtime, we were outside. So we were all sitting on the lawn. We're watching this ceremony, you know. And I'm there with, you know, my beer in my hand with a few students that were also in the club, you know. I said, the next time she comes around, I said, I'm gonna take this beer and pour it right over her head. Jiz, you're not gonna do that? Like, I'm not? Watch me. And I just went. And everybody was looking at me. And now I'm holding up the beer, and people started clapping. They were like, wow, man, that was great. I ended up having to pay for her dress, which was like $30. So I took the funds out of the members' fees. It's a long story, man. It was just a big racket. Put On Your War Paint deals with the Cold War between the United States and what was the USSR at the time. We came from a, not really a leftist point of view, but more of a pro-American stance. Whereas a lot of the punk bands, including bands like The Clash, you know, they sung again about Margaret Thatcher or whatever was going on at the time, you know. No matter who was in office or no matter what was happening, we don't support you. That was one of the reasons why we never got to play with a band like the Kennedys. They were kind of smart enough to see where we were coming from. To quote one of their tunes, punk means thinking for yourself. So if punk means thinking for yourself, why wasn't our band allowed to voice our opinion? Why do we have to say blah, 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 blah? Why do we have to say this is what's wrong with the country, blah, 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 blah? You know, and that's really what differentiated my band from a lot of these other bands. You know, from all of them, like I would say.
The song is a political song, but it doesn't have any words to it.
So that album came out in August to September of 1983. Well, the reviews that we'd gotten were similar to, these guys have talent, and damn it, they have talent, and we just have to accept the fact that they have talent. So that's where a lot of the journalists came from. They weren't really receptive of it. But you know something, man? The radio stations were. I'm proud of it more now, because now so I can say, wow, this is, look at the album that we did. A lot of bands put out like a lot of albums. Some bands only put out one album, like the Sex Pistols. It was a great album. It depends how you look at it. Do I listen to it? No. Do we play some of the songs live? Yeah. Do I enjoy playing them live? Yeah. Do I enjoy teaching them to the band, having the band learn it? No. I mean, you know, I just hope people get a kick out of it.
I don't know what I'm up against. I don't know what it's all about. I got so much to think about. Think I love you, no one is all afraid of. I'm afraid that I'm not sure, and there is no cure for. I think I love you, it's not what life is made of. No, it worries me to say, I never felt this way. You leave me, you never have to worry. How do I make you happy? And if you say go away, I will. But I think that it's still better stay around and love you. You think I have a face? Let me ask you to your face. Do you think you love me? I think I love you. 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 Nixon now more than ever. Tricky Dixon, afraid forever. Nixon, Nixon, Nixon now. I need you, need you, need you now. Nixon, Nixon, Nixon now. You're ready to pain.